I wanted this look, I'd go get vinyl that looked like that.
Right, so that's my point.
But if I wanted to
doesn't make sense for the cost, but you like it, and that's cool.
I do like it, yeah.
All right, this is yours. Congratulations.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, this is Phil from Ashland Leather, and today I wanted to show you a little bit of what to look for in different pieces of leather, and specifically what I look for in pieces of leather. Maybe you're a leather crafter and you want to know a little bit more about this material. And at the end of the video, I also have a bunch of different shell cordovan types from around the world, from different tanneries that I've brought in Amir to help me with. Nobody knows this, but Amir has started his first week here with us at Ashland. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity to bring you in here and to show everybody, along with yourself, some of the learning and training that we go through when we want to learn about the leather. Such a pleasure to have you here. You're so talented, and I can't wait to see how much further you develop, and just the potential in you is incredible. But I'd like to teach you a little bit more about leather, in specific Horween leather. But why don't you start by telling us and everybody out there what your background is and how you got into this sort of leather world.
For sure. So I used to work in games, and I was working on a computer all day, and you know, the tactility in there. And I learned I was a kinesthetic learner. I learned better when I had my hands on something. I took one leatherworking class, made a belt, and I was like, man, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know? But leather's a luxury material, so when I wanted to craft as a hobbyist, I'd go out and go hunting in old alleys and skin couches and take it home, make it into guitar straps. And I went from being a hobbyist, I sought some more training. I went to the Chicago School of Shoemaking, and I learned about more types of leather, like latigo and chrome tans, and you know, stuff other than upholstery couch leather. And
skin
now,
in the couches.
Yeah, that was some frontier living, you know. I grew up in the city, and that was the most frontier I've ever been. I mean, I've gone from alley couch leather to bag weight to...
And now we're at the shell.
The creme de la creme.
You kind of advanced quickly there. And you know, I thought that was the first time you told me that story. I had never met anybody that had, like you said, skin couches, which I think is really funny, like a leather forager, which is super smart in the city here because people are so wasteful. And
just throw it out.
I just think that's really smart and also awesome that you're able to recycle and reuse some of that stuff. And I've seen the stuff you've made. It's really nice. Let's get into a little bit about some of the different features and characteristics that I look for in different pieces of leather. So I brought a bunch of stuff that I had laying around our workshop here, and these are all Horween leathers and different types of leathers. So the first thing I like to do when I get a piece of leather is just sort of look at it. What does it look like? And on this top piece of leather here, this is a leather that is called latigo, like you had mentioned you're a little familiar with. The Horween latigo is a little softer and more round than most latigos in the world. Yeah. But this one, I look at the surface here, and it looks really grainy. So I see a lot of that sort of grain character in there. And how do I describe that? It looks almost like little hair holes of the animal, but I'm also seeing some more of like this, we call it more of like a sugary look when the leather folds in on itself. You see there where I'm flexing it in the middle?
Oh, sure.
Where these like, it kind of looks like if you were to pour out a bunch of sugar.
No, yeah, it really does.
It's like, and so oftentimes what that is a layer of finish on the surface called a top coat. That's often bright and shiny, and when it's creasing, it sort of delaminates in a very small way, and that's what that sugary look is on the middle. But the latigo is often really characterized by these small grain holes. So take a look when you fold it. Do you see those little holes there that are sort of where the hair of the animal was? Yeah. And that's what we call the leather grain. So this is very obviously a full grain leather. Sure. You can sort of fake that grain character by impressing different textures into it. There's actually a texture called a hair cell, which is often very challenging for me to tell if it's real or not, because the textures are so accurate these days, and the way that they press them in the leather are really good. So you can often fake it. But I happen to know this one is a full grain leather, and all that means is we have not buffed down or sanded down the grain of the hide. Okay. So full grain is a really important characteristic that we'll talk about a little bit further. The opposite of full grain is called corrected grain, and that's when you take sandpaper and sort of smooth it down. And tanneries do that to upgrade the leather. It sort of removes some of the imperfections that are in the grain, like this little bit of scar on the bottom here. Sure. It will remove a lot of that like very prominent looking scar and sort of level it out, and you're able to finish on top of it and hide it a little bit. So that's what corrected grain is. Full grain stuff, you see everything.
So when it's full grain, and you know it's full grain, and it looks good, you know that that's a quality piece of leather as opposed to something that needed to be sanded down and...
Well, so that's very important, because the answer is no. That doesn't make it better or worse. And that's actually a really common misperception that I see in the world, is just because it's full grain doesn't mean it's great. It just means it hasn't been buffed.
Okay.
Right?
So it's just different.
Yeah, it's so there's more to this than just the look, right? There's also the feel. And speaking of look, this backside of this one is red, where the top is black and the cross section is red.
Why is that?
So this is something called drum dyeing or mill dyeing. So the tannery can take a side of leather, put it in a drum with a bunch of different dyes, and it strikes the dye all the way through the substrate of the leather. So this originally, before they put black on the surface, was red all the way through. The bottom, the grain side, the flesh side, the grain side, and the cross section, all red. And what they did was they put a heavy black stain coat over the top of it. And this is actually a product called Visage Latigo. So this is black on red visage, and when this is scuffed and scratched, you get a little bit of that red coming out from underneath.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of a cool feature sometimes. This is a pretty tough finish on here, so it's hard for me to actually scrape it off.
Yeah.
But you can start to see a little bit of that red coming through there. So that's mill dyed, drum dyed. You can mill dye everything. This one has been mill dyed, but it's a light color. This one has not been mill dyed. You can see the cross section is a different color. This one has not been mill dyed. The flesh side is much different color than the grain. That's been lightly mill dyed. So that's just it's really easy to see on black. Like black has been mill dyed. You can see black on the wrong side of the leather. I've got the look, but it's also a feel. So this leather, when I feel it, I like to grab the leather sort of like a book and hold it like this and sort of squeeze it. So take a feel of that. And what I notice on that one is it feels a little, this is sort of like the ultimate evaluation of a leather. You get a lot of different senses happening here. You can feel if the grain is smooth or waxy or silky, or if it's a little dry. And you also get a nice idea of the hand feel. Like, does the leather spring back to you? Is it super drapey and soft, or is it like a piece of cardboard? Is it very firm in temper? So for me, that one has a really nice roundness to it, but it also bites back to your hand. That's something I call a veg bite.
Yeah, that really snaps back.
So how would you describe the way that it's coming back to your hand? Because I've always, it's like, it's not firm, but it has like its own body. Like it wants to be something else, but it's not super soft either. It's sort of this weird thing.
No, yeah, it kind of follows your hand.
Right?
Now, is there any chromium in this?
This is a combination tan leather.
Okay.
The Latigo is chrome tanned with the vegetable retan, and the Latigo in particular from Horween has an incredible amount of tree barks that they tan into there, so it's really well aging. I've actually got a key fob that's not on me in the Latigo that's 10 years old, and it just looks ancient now. So the more you wear the Latigo, the better it gets. So let's move on to this guy here. Tell me what you see on that leather before I tell you what it is.
Well, I'm seeing some pull-up when I bend it. And what do we got going on here? What are these?
Those little
stripes?
striations. Yeah. These are great questions. So this is a leather called Dublin. And the pull-up effect you're seeing there, we actually call it a burst effect on the Dublin leather. And that's because it's bursting the wax layer that's on the top surface that floats up above the leather. It's sort of moving and bursting that wax. So you're seeing through underneath the wax when you move it. So it's slightly different than a pull-up, like a pull-up you would see on this leather, where it's it's not a wax burst that's happening. You're just seeing color come from underneath.
Oh, okay.
It's the same look, really, but we just call it different things.
So in this case, this is pull-up.
Yes, and this is what we would call the burst, but you could call it a pull-up too.
Okay.
And the other little natural striations that you're seeing that run sort of horizontal to the cut there, those are fat wrinkles in the animal. These are natural grain characteristics in that animal.
Yeah.
And I actually happen to like them. A lot of manufacturers can't work with that because they need to make the absolute same thing every time.
Sure.
So they can't deal with any variation. At Ashland, we embrace all that. We'll cut it because I think it looks cool. I like a natural look.
Yeah, it's got character.
What do you feel about the firmness?
Well, this one has nice hand. It feels very smooth.
Does it feel sticky or smooth? Because oftentimes, like when I know that has a lot of wax on it, I often feel like when I drag my hand this direction, I feel like it has a bit of grab to it. Like it's not super silky.
Sure.
It's a little bit grabby to me.
Yeah, it has a slight tact.
Yeah.
You can even kind of hear it.
I think you're feeling the wax finish on there. So describe this latigo piece, how that feels to you. Sort of like if you just were to rub your hand on it.
Sure.
Or grab it slightly and you know.
Yeah, this feels a little bit more silky, kind of.
A little less grabby.
Yeah, this has a bit more.
So what you're feeling here is a top coat that has a bit of additive that's a little silkier feeling.
Okay.
And on this one, you're just feeling straight wax because there's no finish coats on these.
Sure.
On the Dublin, it's just stain and wax.
And this is a combination tan too.
This is a veg tan leather. The
So
Dublin is, and that's actually why it makes that funky noise.
Is that it?
So listen to I'll put this up to the mic. I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like veg to me.
Yeah.
And you hear it a lot on like wallets when you're walking around. It sometimes if it's not broken in enough, that sound.
Yeah.
That's a veg sound.
Okay.
So if you move the leather around like that, that's how you can sort of hear veg. Let's move on to this next piece there. That is a really nice leather, but I'll let you examine it first. So what's the first thing you see there? Like for me, there's a very obvious thing happening.
Yeah, I can see a lot of the wax on the top here, and it feels kind of waxy. But that color is beautiful.
So this is a very famous leather called Chrome Excel.
Okay.
We make a good amount of Chrome Excel products, but what you kind of already identified a couple things about the Chrome Excel. Which one is that pull-up effect that is very much like a classic characteristic of Chrome Excel is how much color changes from the surface of the leather to the undertone of the leather. So the difference between the table color and the pull-up color, as we would call it in the tannery.
So this is the table is what's down here.
So we call it table as it would lay on the table. So if you just were to throw it down, okay, that's the table color. And then once you pull it up, it's when you start to flex the leather and you start to see a little bit more color oftentimes from the underside of the Chrome Excel.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right? The thing that really signifies Chrome Excel to me is how rich it feels. It's like super waxy, super rich. And that's because the leather itself is actually about half grease and wax and oil. 50% of that is not animal. It's oils and waxes and greases. So it's incredibly rich. And it actually gives you this really cool thing. So it's starting to get a little bit hazy on the top. But what's happening there, and what's cool about it, is when you buy a shoe, you're able to just brush it, and it comes back to life sort of like it was new.
Oh, sure.
So Chrome Excel was originally sold as a self-polishing leather for that reason. It's just so much wax and oil in it. You see this a lot in boat shoes. You see a lot of wallets out of it.
Now, does that help with the waterproofing, or does that have
It's
any
not
kind of...
waterproof, but it's very water resistant.
Sure. So if some water got on top of this, it'd probably bead.
It beads and rolls off, but if you let water sit on top of it, it will eventually soak through.
Okay.
So that's an important designation between waterproof and water resistant.
Cool.
So speaking of Chrome Excel, this is another piece of Chrome Excel, but what do you notice that's different about that one?
Right away, I see the kind of the pebbling, you know, the kind of the you can really see the characteristics of the skin.
And the way that they've labeled this swatch book is a dead giveaway to what it is.
Yeah.
This is bison Chrome Excel. It's actually actual bison hide.
Wow.
But they accentuate that bison character with a texture emboss on top of it to make it a little bit more even, because the bison sides, if you don't do anything like that, they're incredibly random. So that texture gives it a little bit more evenness and actually a little bit more interest. I think it looks cool.
Yeah.
I feel like this one, for some reason, when I look at the break, so we didn't talk about this a moment ago, but it's very important if you're a shoemaker, which you've made shoes, it's very important to look at the break, because where your shoe flexes, you're going to see this sort of delamination.
Yeah.
This one's not the worst. I think it's because it's bison and it has that texture already in it. You're starting to see these sort of loose break effects, whereas this other piece of Chrome Excel, I hope, doesn't break like that. It's more of a tight break. So,
Yeah.
so there's different types of break, and what's happening with break is the delamination of the grain layer from the fiber layer of the hide.
Oh, they're starting to separate.
Yep, and they get more or less pebbly. So what we would call is a tight break. Looks something like this, where it's very much close together. That delamination is not like piped, like a big, like piping is what they would call it too.
Oh, okay.
So that one's like a little bit more of a coarse break, right? Where this is a finer break. And oftentimes we're looking for this. There are leathers, like here's another type of break, which we would call a sugary break.
Right.
So loose, tight, sugary. Most people identify shell cordovan as a very tight break. Most people would think of a calfskin as a very tight break. We don't do much calfskin here. But generally speaking, those are often true. Let's do another one on texture. So this is very interesting, right?
Yeah, this is like goosebumps almost.
Yep. A few years ago, we made at Horween a special project for Timberland, and they wanted to make boots out of basketball leather. So they made a black basketball leather for Timberland. And what I noticed on this leather is it's very firm. Like when you grab it,
Yeah.
it doesn't have that same sort of, it's not bad, but it doesn't have that same nice roundness as the Dublin did. So you can feel like the difference of those two. It doesn't snap back as much as the Dublin does, or that full veg.
Yeah, you can really leave that.
It's a
folded.
little bit more like boardy feeling, we
Yeah.
would call it. And that's a temper designation we would call. So
Okay.
it's either drapey on one end of the spectrum or boardy on the other end.
So this would be a bit more drapey compared
Yep.
to something like this, which is like
This one has like a nice roundness though. So think of like you've made a bag before, right?
I've made,
So
yep.
think about if you made this into a bag, would it drape over or would it stand up? This one,
Oh, sure.
right? Like that one,
More structure.
yep. And that's sort of how I think about temper. Most people making bags might want it a little softer, more
Yeah.
drapey.
Yeah.
And you get that a lot in the full chrome stuff that I think you're also familiar with.
Yep. That's the most common stuff I've worked with for bags.
The thing about veg though is it's often because it's vegetable tan leather, an inherent characteristic of veg is how easily it will dent. And I'm not actually sure why that's happening, like, from like physically, like why that happens. It's just an observation that it tends to dent and scratch a lot more easily
Sure.
than the chrome stuff.
Yeah.
Not sure why that is, but that's probably an important thing for a lot of people. If you're making leather goods on your own, you might want to be interested to know that the veg scrapes and scuffs and dents much more easily than a full chrome. So I've got this is another piece of Dublin here, and I brought this one out because it should have the same sort of grain character
Yeah.
as this other Dublin piece, but you pointed out one aspect on this English tan Dublin that was interesting. This is called a fat wrinkle. That often you see it on the necks of the animals. This is something different. We call this draw. And this is where the leather sort of shrinks in on itself, or it could be natural character in the animal.
Yeah.
I like this. A shoemaker would have an awful time trying to make a consistent product unless it looked like this every time, which it doesn't. It's sort of random.
Okay.
So this is interesting to know about draw. If you're buying leather and you see this, I like it, but if you're trying to make 100 of the same thing, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to try to get this exact pattern every time. If not, one more thing I think we should probably talk about is different amounts of finish. And I mentioned that this one was drum dyed red or
Okay.
mill dyed
Yeah.
all the way red, and we finished a heavy coat on top. So for me, when you put that much finish and you're trying to cover up something else, you don't get what we call an aniline leather. And this is a very important word that is often thrown around as marketing spin. People call things aniline when they're not. But what aniline leather means is that you're not using any solids in your finish. Essentially, the difference between paint and stain. I know you're a woodworker as well.
Okay.
So if you painted these walls behind me, you're not going to see the
Right.
If it was wood, you wouldn't see the wood behind it. Or if it was brick, you wouldn't see those bricks. You would see the effect of the brick, but you
Right.
would see paint. It
So-
wouldn't look like brick.
So aniline is when something is painted or when it's...
The analog would be aniline leather is like stained wood.
Oh, okay.
Where
So you're bringing out the characteristics of the grain.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you're not bringing out the characteristics, you're just not covering them up.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense.
So there's a spectrum of different finishes. The most, or the least amount of finish is something called naked, where there's no stain, no paint, no nothing on it. It's
Sure.
just a naked piece of leather. That's oftentimes called a crust. There's aniline leather, which is just stained. There's semi-aniline, where it's stained with like a couple drops of paint, and it covers it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then there's like a full pigmented, which covers up everything. So you'll see this in cars a lot because the specs for car interiors, those leather seats need to be very much painted on, because not only are they making thousands and thousands of cars and thousands of seats, they need them all to be the same. But also when somebody sits on it and wears it, it has to be resistant to all the scratches. So like I was saying, that this leather has a very tough finish. So if I hit it or try to scratch it, it's very much resistant to scratching. And you'll see that on cars.
Okay.
And what it is there's silicones in the finish, in that
Whoa.
top coat, that sort of make it so it's smooth, so you
Yeah.
can't grab it. So that's finishing, but let's look at it in practicality here. So this is a full finish next to an aniline finish. And I think it's pretty obvious there. Like, and Horween does a really nice job,
Yeah.
even with their full finish stuff, of making it look real. But you'll never see a full finish leather look like this. It will almost always look like paint. And there are some examples in these shells that do look like paint.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the shells.
All right.
All right, so for a long time, I've been wanting to do this sort of experiment or
Sure.
demonstration with the world, but I couldn't do it myself because I'm fully biased. And it's awesome that you're here because, and not to be rude about it, but you have much less experience with the cordovan
Sure, yeah.
than I do. So I think you would be a fair person to talk to about the differences in cordovan, because I'm imagining people that will be interested in this will be leather crafters like yourself, interested in leather, want to learn more about it, and they will come across different types of shell cordovan from different tanneries in the world. So there's some in Italy, there's some in England, there's some in Japan. There's cordovan tanners around the world, and they're all different. So some people are confused by that because it's still called shell cordovan,
Okay.
but each tannery can make their own shell cordovan. So simply put, the only shell cordovan from Horween Leather Company is always called genuine Horween shell cordovan.
Okay.
That's a trademark name, but it could be called shell cordovan anywhere else in the world. So I have them, every tannery shell cordovan here represented. We're not going to trash anybody. In fact, we're just going to talk about what we see.
Sure.
In fact, you're going to talk about what you see because,
Okay.
again, like I'm super biased, but I thought it would be interesting to go through these together, have you just talk about what you're seeing,
Yeah.
and we'll try to show it the best we can on the cameras. And then at the end, I'd like you to pick, maybe 1, 2, or 3 of your favorites, because
Okay.
there are some curveballs in here.
Cool.
I'll warn you in advance.
Okay.
So I think this would be fun.
What's all shell, right? You're not
These
gonna,
are all marketed as shell cordovan.
Okay.
But not all of them, or maybe not any of them, are Horween. I don't know. So I'm trying to make my bias completely removed.
All right, let's go.
So take a look at this shell and just first observations. Tell me about the look, the feel, all the things we just talked about on those other pieces of leather.
Yeah, so it's got a nice temper. It gosh, that's really smooth.
How would you describe the temper other than nice?
It's definitely firm.
Mm-hmm.
It
Agreed.
It
Tell me about the break.
the break
So I like to cup the leather in my hand.
like that.
Yeah, and sometimes what you can do is you can sort of hit like where your hand is, like this, and then that is a good designation of break, and just show everybody what you're looking at.
Wow, yeah, that's that's smooth through and through.
That's a pretty tight break.
Yeah, that's a very tight break.
What do you think about the visual character of the shell itself? I can't call it grain because it's not technically not grain. It's the
Right.
shell.
Right. No, it's that gloss finish. It's almost like shoot. That's mighty smooth.
So pretty nice. You like this one.
Yeah, this is nice.
So let's put that in a pile that maybe you want to call nice for now, and we'll try to start.
Okay.
Or maybe you do like, hey, that's number one. So that's the best so far.
Already?
Well, it's only one.
Okay.
All right, what do you think about this one?
This feels well, it's got a smooth top. The brake seems pretty tight.
Looks pretty tight to me. Show that. Maybe we can show this camera. Okay. What about everything else about it? Does it look like aniline? Does it look?
It's different.
How's it feel?
The temper feels different than this guy.
How different?
This feels a lot more kind of rigid.
Yeah.
And this has got a bit more play.
Agreed.
I think if I had to pick between these two already, I'm liking this a bit more.
All right, let's keep that one on top and put this underneath, I guess.
Okay.
And again, we don't know whose leather is
who's who.
So what do you think about this guy? And I want to just hint on this one. I'm not trying to lead your opinions, but remember what we talked about mill dyed and drum dyed.
Yeah.
See what you think about that one.
Well, this one, it's got a pretty tight brake.
Yeah, that's nice.
It almost looks a bit more matte. I mean, it's still glossy, but to me, it looks a bit more matte. Maybe that's just because it's black; it's absorbing more light. But
it looks. I'm trying so hard to not say stuff. So
yeah, be careful. You don't want to give it away.
Matt's. I think it's a little shiny, right? It's got a nice luster.
I'm not saying it's not shiny. I'm just saying, and it could be because it's black, it's absorbing more light. But I feel like it's not quite. Maybe if we hit it with the brush, it's not quite as.
Does that look like painted bricks or stained bricks?
Wow, can I look at the back? Or is that?
You can look at the back, yeah. So that was the other thing, is it's drum dyed.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is definitely, I'd say painted.
I think so too.
Yeah,
let's rank it. Let's rank it on these three shells. Where does that?
Out of these three?
Where does that line up for you?
You're gonna cut out my thinking, right?
No.
Because I want to be honest.
Well, I've tried to cut out as little as possible.
Okay, not bad.
But if you want, we'll go over this together and cut out whatever you want.
No, it's just
thinking is good. I think you should think about it. It takes time to think about all these.
Yeah, I'm a little on the spot.
We'll give you a chance to re-rank them as well.
Okay. I think right now, these are kind of tied.
Okay.
These are tied.
And you like the orangey yellow guy the most?
This is still the leader.
Okay. Here's another piece.
Okay, yeah. This has definitely got a bit more play.
What did you said? Okay, yeah. What did you immediately notice about that one?
It's got nice hand. It's got a smooth texture on the top. Kind of. Would you call that silky or?
It's not about me at this moment.
Okay.
I'll go through and tell my opinions afterwards.
Okay. It's got a nice smooth hand. The brake.
How is that brake?
The brake looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a nice shine to it.
Do you notice anything about like I was talking about painted bricks or not painted bricks? Do you see anything like that on there that stands out to you?
I definitely think that this is if this looks more almost like a stain than a paint.
Comparing these two, you would say this looks more stained.
Yeah, you can kind of see what's going on underneath compared to this where it's pretty uniform.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Oh, actually, you want to rank those?
All right. So these two probably tied, and then I'm kind of keen on this one.
Okay, cool.
And then this one would follow.
Okay, so put this on top of here then. Okay. So this is second place, and we still got the yellow one as first.
That's first, yeah.
What do you think about this shell?
This kind of reminds me of like a diner bar stool. You know what I mean?
Why does it look like a diner bar stool?
Well, it's got that nice red pop. You know, I mean the red is real loud.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a bit more matte in its.
Like the surface feel, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
Or you mean visually?
Visually, it pops. The red pops, but it's also. It's got a fair sheen to it, but it's not as glossy as some of the other shells we've looked at. It's definitely the The temper is a bit more firm. It doesn't have quite as much play as the other two.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about
Let's
the
check
brake.
The brake. Yeah, that's a fairly tight brake, but I'm seeing some stuff going on in there.
I'd say that looks a little sugary.
Yeah, that looks a little sugary.
Yeah, you could start to.
It feels a little
And
bit too.
I guess I'll step in on this one. I'm trying to remain biased, but you are starting to see the finish come off in the brake a little bit when you flex it in.
Well, I could feel it too.
Especially right there. So a classic or like a specific characterization of shell cordovan is that it doesn't crease. So what you're seeing there, if it's creasing, that's either just like not a nice shell, or if it's creasing, it's just not shell at all.
Sure.
Because that's one very specific thing that everybody loves about shell cordovan is you wear a pair of shoes, and when your toe flexes when you're walking around,
There's no crease.
you get a shoe that lasts forever. So that's one thing people want, and
I can see that.
this one might not give you that.
No.
So rank that one where you will.
I mean, I'm keen on the color, but as far as the shell itself, I'm gonna have to put that on the bottom.
Okay. There's another guy.
Okay. Yeah.
First impressions of this one.
Well, it's got quite a bit of grab.
Yeah, interesting.
It's got that sound. It's a bit more matte, and that could just be because it's black, right? It's absorbing more light. It's not quite as glossy as some of the other shells.
Mhm.
Two of the other shells, I'd say. The brake's looking good. It's feeling good.
Nice.
Not much
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
sugar there.
How about let's start with, I keep saying like the brick thing, but
Oh, as far as like,
Does
I
it
think
look
this looks
very
this looks
finishy or
way
not
this looks
finishy?
way more like it was painted
and
because you can't see much of what's going on.
there's
under
something
it.
else there though, like that really stands out to me, and I
What's
wonder
that?
see all these little dots?
Yeah.
Like that's not something we really talked about before, but
Oh yeah.
I don't
sure.
know I don't think I would cut those into anything.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what that is. Like little pits.
Yeah, and you can feel them too. They're not underneath; they're on the surface.
So I don't know what tannery this is. We're not going to tell anybody who it is. I don't know if that's just a reject that we bought from them or if it's regular stuff, but I don't know. So all fairness is, let's pretend that those dots aren't there.
Yeah.
How would you rank this shell?
Probably close to the red.
Okay.
Maybe above the red.
We got a bunch more shells here to go. Let's keep it going. All right.
Yeah, this definitely looks more. What? Yeah, it looks more painted. It's got a bit of grab to it.
It's not. To me. It's not super. It's a little smoother. Like as far as like if you just wipe your thumb across it like this, or you're
Sure, if you were just brushing it, but
It's
if
not
you're-
super. What do you
put
try?
some pressure.
When you say grabby, like when you really get your hand into it,
Yeah,
it's
if you put some pressure on it, you could
okay. I see what you're saying.
kind of slide, kind of has some pull.
How's that one like the hand feel for you?
I mean, it feels pretty smooth in the hand. It feels pleasurable to hold.
Oh, like when you grab it though. Like if it was a hammer
Oh.
handle or something.
Yeah, it's got a
Is
lot
it
of
the temper is what?
snap back.
Mm-hmm.
The temper is pretty
I'd say quite firm.
Yeah. No, really.
It's like a piece of cardboard almost.
Yeah, this doesn't have very much play as far as the temper. I mean, you
But
can.
that surface feel wasn't so bad.
No, the surface feels nice. It's smooth.
It looks very
Let me
smooth.
see the brake. It's a tight brake. Yeah, feels good too. I don't
Okay,
feel
let's
anything
rank
going on.
that one. We got so many more shells here.
This would probably be a little bit closer to the top, I'd say.
Okay.
Maybe I'll put it right there.
So check out this color. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's nice.
And by the way, so what I just said, take out of there because I'm trying to not be biased. I just think the shade is an interesting
No,
shade.
yeah, I appreciate it, man. I mean, I'm still learning, and this is the first time I've ever seen this much shell in one place.
I don't think most people have seen this much shell.
I mean, yeah, this is quite a big first
First week of work here?
Well, first experience with this material,
Tell me what you think about that guy.
I'm digging what's going on as far as visually. It's got a nice kind of gloss to it. Yeah, it's got a nice gloss. I can kind of see what's going on inside the skin.
I'm glad you pointed that out, and I'm gonna interrupt. Many of the ones that you've looked at are heavily finished.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spoil this one a little bit. I know that this is not Horween, but most of these don't have much of an aniline finish, and I think it's really important to note that like the aniline stuff is just so much for me, and that's actually the point of all this. Is like this is so subjective. So like none of these, and this is for everybody. None of these shells are better or worse. They're just totally different.
Sure.
And I want to give one person's subjectivity onto this leather, especially you who knows about leather but not about cordovan. I want to give this sort of unbiased perspective so people can make a good decision on their own.
Sure.
But I do like, personally, the more aniline finish stuff, and it's cool that you recognize it. It's almost like the color changes differently at whatever angle you look at it. You know, and it's sort of like when we were looking at the Chrome Excel, it has sort of like a pull-up color. So I do like this one, and again, as spoilers, I know this is not Horween.
Okay.
So it's possible for me to like stuff that's not from the tannery I used to work at.
Sure. No,
let's talk about the feel and all that stuff too.
It's got nice hand. It's geez, I mean they all feel really nice, you know? It's real tough to
How does it visually look smooth like most of the other ones, or?
Yeah, it looks it's got, I wouldn't say it's not the glossiest, but it's definitely, I'd say, a bit more glossy than some of the other ones we've looked at.
Okay, then rank that one wherever it fits in your
break.
ranking.
Oh, you can kind of feel something in there though. Here.
It's got a kind of poopy break.
Well, you can feel it.
So it's not particularly smooth when you've creased it a little bit.
Go. You feel it? Or am I crazy?
Let me get back to this one, but
Okay.
I've already spoiled this one a bit. I feel finish a little bit, but I like that it's aniline. It's almost like this one has a grabby top coat to it. Like it's a little tacky and sticky, like a waxy, but it feels like top coat to me, which is often smooth. But I do like the look of this one. This one has like weird things that feel smooth but look rough. Like, and I don't know if you that was. And that's cool that we're learning this together, or looking at it together, because if you don't immediately notice that, maybe most people won't.
Right.
But I see this here that looks like sort of fibrous and more opened, although it feels very smooth. It doesn't look smooth. It almost looks dry.
Yeah.
Like we would call this a hungry look down there.
When you say hungry, what is it hungry for?
Hungry for more finish. Like it doesn't look filled in enough. It looks like to me, it looks like it was sanded down and didn't get filled in enough.
I can kind of see that. It might be kind of hard to pick up on camera.
Here, okay, so even though I fully biasly broke this example, just rank it wherever you will. Try to take out my bias if you could.
I think I'm gonna put this kind of towards the. I mean, I do like what you call the aniline, because I kind of like to get to know what I'm working with. I'd put it towards the middle.
Okay.
Maybe closer to the top.
All right, looks like we have 1, 2. So it looks like we have 4 more shells to go here. So
Okay.
here's one more.
Well, yeah, this you know who you're talking to. You can really see.
What do you mean by that?
You know, you can see the. It doesn't look like it's been painted over to be a uniform color, right? It's
Very natural looking, or
yeah.
is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, you can see kind of like the grain. You know, you kind of know who you're talking to here.
I don't know what you mean by know who you're talking to. I'm sorry.
You like. As far as the material goes, like you know, like you can get an idea who this is.
You think you know who this is?
Yeah, I mean, because.
What makes you think that you know? Who do you think this is?
Well, you know, it's like
Who are you?
It's like if you had to look at like fingerprints.
I mean,
know,
that's a very dramatic difference. But like this is
yeah.
not
Well,
about
this
what
one I kind of know who I'm talking to. This one's a uniform color. I don't know who this is. You know. What
So
I mean?
you think this is Horween? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm saying like, I can see the animal in here. You know.
Oh,
what I mean?
I
The
see what you
color.
mean.
I know who I'm talking to.
It looks
this
like a
one-
real thing.
Well, I mean, they both look like real things, but this one I feel like I know the animal a bit more. You know, I can see what's going on
Okay.
underneath. Where this is a uniform color, right? This is straight.
Right. That's a pretty dramatic difference too. Not only like in terms of color, but like in terms of finish.
It's cool that you get such a range in cordovan shell, where you could get something that's straight uniform if you're making 100 of the same thing.
Right.
And then something like this has a bit more character as far as the story it's going to tell and how it's going to, you know, show up on a final product.
Well, let's get some more like impressions about how you feel about this. Like, let's talk about the look, the feel, temper, all that stuff.
So the temper's pretty firm. It's got a little bit more play than a lot of the other ones we've looked at. I mean, I wouldn't say it has the most play as far as temper. It's got a nice, feels very, very smooth.
How's the hand feel?
It's got good hand. Really
It
does.
has a nice little snap back there.
Follow you, and you can kind of. Oh yeah, you can definitely see that. No, yeah, this is nice.
Take a look at the brake.
Yeah, it looks like a tight brake.
Okay, how do you feel about that one if you want to rank it?
This one I would put closer to the top. I might be biased in that I just like the look of the grain as opposed to a uniform color. But yeah, as far as the feel, and it has a bit more play than some of the other ones.
I wouldn't say that's biased at this point because I think it's just your opinion.
Sure. It's my subjective opinion. I put this closer to the top.
All right.
What's next?
Here's another shell.
Ooh, that's a rich color. That looks nice. Now, can I ask what's going on here, or will that?
You can ask, but I'm just not going to tell you. Just tell me what you see, because I don't think that the people are going to be able to see what you're seeing right now.
Sure.
If you can just kind of describe what you're seeing. Like, what made you ask me what you just asked me?
Well, you kind of see there's some lighter kind of speckles going on. I'm curious if that's the grain of the skin, or if that's something else. I mean, it doesn't have those kind of pock holes that we saw in the other one. Those kind of
like you don't feel like
divots.
it's a divot.
No,
yeah.
it's smooth through and through. It's got a little. Well, no, it's pretty smooth. It's pretty silky. The brake looks nice and tight. You wanna look at that? Brake looks nice and tight. Feels good too. It's the temper is a little bit more firm. I put it on the firmer side. It doesn't have as much play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Hand feel?
Hand feels. It feels pretty smooth.
Or like
How it snaps back. Yeah, that's kind of like the temper. It's kind of.
yeah.
It's pretty firm. It knows where it wants to be.
Okay. How do you rate that guy?
I'd put this towards the middle, but closer to the top. I'd say.
Okay. Here's another guy.
Yeah, that's nice.
So what is nice about that immediately got you?
I think it's a nice color. You know, that's a real rich color. I mean, I can't really see too much of the grain. I guess you can. No, I can't see too much of the grain.
Well, keep in mind that none of these will have grain if they're actually shell cordovan because it's using the shell inside the hide. So you're never going to see actual grain. You'll see things that are grain-like.
Okay.
But I think, can I speak for you? When you said that, I think what you're trying to say is like it's super smooth.
Yeah.
It's super like this is a really smooth piece.
It's pretty
smooth and even.
Pretty uniform, yeah. Cross. Yeah, it's this is definitely got a firmer temper to it. Wouldn't you say? Yeah, I'd,
so you like that guy? Let's rank that one.
Actually, I mean, I like the color, but as far as like the temper, I might put this guy more towards the middle.
Okay. I was surprised. I thought you liked that one.
I like yeah.
Here's another one.
Okay. Yeah, this has a looser temper. It's still got some character, yeah, but it's got a bit more play. The flexibility is nice. The brake's looking good. I like that color too, and you can kind of see what's going on underneath. It's got some character to it. I might put this guy near the top. I'm pretty keen on this.
Cool. Put it in there. Rank it. Nice. So this is fun, and I'm glad that we did this because this did not go the way I thought it would. So
Oh, yeah?
you didn't pick my favorite stuff,
Oh,
but that's because you're you.
that's, yeah, different
So
perspectives.
I want to give you a chance to go back through them again, rank them in any way that you want, that the things that you like the most. Maybe pick.
Can I pick like my top 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Pick the top 3,
Okay, so I think this is definitely in the top
or
3.
maybe they were already in the right order.
Well, I kind of I kind of stacked them how.
There were a lot of shells to go through
This is,
to rank.
I was pretty keen on this one. And then I really,
Actually, let's do top 5. Let's do
Top
top 5, and
five?
we'll whittle it down a
okay,
little bit.
okay. That one there. You know, I kind of dig
You like the red
this
guy?
one because it really does. It kind of reminds me of like and I don't know, something about the mattness of it too. You know, I mean, it's got some shine, but it's not like the shiniest. You know,
Mhm.
I kind of like that.
So one more.
One more. I think I really like that one. Darker. I think I like this one. I don't like how that, crazy about how that feels. Where'd it go? Did I already put it over here? I guess I got this guy. I had to pick from these ones. I think I'd probably go with this guy here.
Okay. So let me take these out of the picture.
Sure.
And from these, so from these 5, tell me what you like. Just like the number one thing that you like most about this one.
This one I like the character. I like what I see.
Okay. This one.
This one I like the color, and I kind of like how glossy it is. You know what I mean? Like that's reflecting a lot of light, and it's kind of pleasurable to look at.
Okay.
This one is kind of the opposite. I kind of like the mattness of this, and I like the uniformity, and I just like how much that color pops. You know?
Yeah, you like
I mean,
the color on this guy.
This thing's screaming, right?
This could be yours. All right. Nice.
This guy, I like this one because there was a bit of character. I liked how this one felt. I liked how tight the break was, and I felt, yeah, this one has nice the temper.
So what's
the temper.
what's the one thing you think?
If I had to pick one thing, I'd
Yeah.
probably pick the temper. I like how kind of flexible
Okay.
this one is. This one, I like this
Was
one.
this the first
got a
one we
lot- This is
looked
the
at,
first
too?
one we looked at. That's got a lot going on. You know, that's some nice character.
Yeah.
The temper's nice, and it reflects a good amount of light.
Okay.
So I think I kind of, this is probably the first
This
one.
is still your
tends
favorite
to
guy.
Be my top favorite. Yeah, I think this.
All right,
is,
cool. So this is great. I'm really glad that we did this because you did not pick a Horween product,
Really.
and I think that's good. Well, you picked in the top 5. You did, but you picked some stuff that wasn't Horween, which I think is really cool. And again, like I'm glad because I didn't want this to be biased at all. I just wanted to talk about what you see and what the differences are. Now, let me tell you what I see on this guy, and I do like the color a lot. I like how smooth it is. I see sort of chatter marks going on this one. It's hard to see at certain angles, but if you look, see how they are going this way?
Oh,
See this, these lines that go, if you see it at certain angles?
Yeah, in the right light.
Yeah. So I don't like that. It feels a little bit like finish to me. And this is, again, like not wrong or right, better or worse. It's just like,
Sure.
I don't tend to like a finishy look. But it actually has an interesting kind of pull up to it too, which is interesting. I like this one too. It's not my favorite, but I am fully biased. What's fun about this one that you picked, this was my favorite non-Horween leather.
More
This
than
is,
that blue?
yes,
Mm.
I was misdirecting you a little bit. So this was my favorite shell that is not Horween, although this one has like a lot of imperfections in it. I just think that the roundness of this, like you were pointing out, was spot on, like correct to my understanding of like what I want.
Sure.
Is it doesn't feel boardy. Like a lot of the stuff that you didn't like felt like cardboard, and
Yeah.
it's just not round at all. But again, that's like sort of my bias. I like a little more supple. And yeah, I just this one's nice. It looks a little fake to me. Like it's not so bad. Like it's an aniline finish, but it looks a little, I don't know, like a semi-aniline almost.
Okay.
Like they tried to spray on some finish to sort of like even it out.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. Like I kind of like it.
Sure.
This one I absolutely hate. So
Really?
this is, you just
Now,
earned.
see,
This is what you earned today.
You said that this one looked.
Aniline.
No. The thing I like about this one, or you said it kind of. You wouldn't. It looks kind of fake. Did you say?
A little bit like semi-aniline.
That's what I liked about this one.
You like that it's
Yeah,
very
'cause
even.
it's like.
You just earned.
It
This will be
looks-
your pay for today.
Oh, is that it? I can take this one home.
Yeah, I think I'll
This
let you
is.
have this.
I mean, because like, look at this. This is like yelling at you. You know what I mean? And it is kind of boardy, so that makes it feel kind of like like. But I don't know. There's something.
That's good. Like I love that.
Personally, I just think that's a.
I really like that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I guess I the reason we had you here again is like I'm way too close to this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen a lot of leathers,
Mm.
and to me, like I'd rather. Why would I want this to be leather? Like
Sure.
you could have just painted a cloth, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That's
the
kind of
fact
how I
that-
feel about it.
The fact that it looks like this, but I can rest easy knowing that it is leather. Like, I don't know. It's like, I know, but it's also like, it looks like it's not. It's kind of interesting.
Would you pay $300 for this?
No.
I mean, like if you had
then I would, if I wanted this look, I'd go get vinyl that looked like that.
right. That's my point.
But if I wanted to
doesn't
make-
make sense for the cost, but you like it, and that's cool.
I do like it, yeah.
All right, this is yours. Congratulations.
Awesome.
So these last
This
two
is
ones, you
nice.
actually picked the two Horween's in there, and that
Oh.
was the curveballs that put two in.
Cool, okay.
So this is the classic color 8 shell cordovan, and like to me, like the feel is like immediately, and I think you picked up on it. You're like,
Yeah,
wow,
it's-
that's like a really nice feel.
I also like how the shine, and you can kind of see what's going on in here,
What's fun about this one is I pulled this out of like an irregular pile.
Oh,
So I
really?
tried to put in like a less nice Horween one, and then like I thought this was super awesome.
No, yeah, I like, because this, like I said, man, you know who you're talking to here. You can see what's going on. Compared to this, you don't know who you're talking to. But this,
Yeah,
this
it's
got
just a very
character.
aniline, natural. In fact, this is natural shell cordovan. And you see all the little bits of character, like you're pointing out. The Horween stuff to me the biggest thing is the feel and the look. Like
Yeah.
none of the Horween stuff is. This one happened. I think you were right. It's like a little firmer than most, but down here is probably a little bit.
That's got a bit more play.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, like this is not the best shell for temper. Like this is much better. To me, most times, and I guess I'm proving myself wrong here. The thing I like about the Horween stuff is the feel. It's very rich, but also like has that sort of bite to it, where it's
Sure.
not drapey, but it like sort of snaps back to your hand, and then the natural amount of finish. The reason a lot of places don't do this is again like their customers can't deal with a
Oh.
random variation.
Sure, they want the uniformity of.
So it takes special partners that Horween needs to have that will take this piece and make it into something cool, like my Viberg boots that are made out of this have a little bit of random variation that I think is cool, and I think Viberg can tell that story.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other places that need like a very consistent red 10,000 times in a row, and this is what they're going to have to get. So I don't know if like I don't know if there's any big takeaway here other than like I've really appreciated your opinion because
Yeah,
I
I
learned some
mean-
stuff from you just watching. But did you have any like takeaway from learning about the leathers themselves and like how I look at it and how I try to appreciate the leather, or did you have any takeaways from the shells?
No doubt. Up to this point, I never even knew to check for break, and I mean, moving forward, that's going to be important. The main thing I look for is the finish, the way, the temper, and it depends on the project too, right? Because if you're
For
making
sure.
if you're making like a slouchy bag, you're not going to want to use something with this much temper, But if you're making a bucket bag, something that has like a round kind of body to it, something with a bit more temper like this would do. But I never knew to check for the break.
That's a big
And I
takeaway. That's
liked-
interesting.
Yeah, and I liked how you described
The
this
sugary.
as sugary, because you've given me a vocabulary to really express what I'm seeing, So I appreciated that.
Sure. Well, I think we should do maybe more stuff like this, just talking about different leathers, because I like doing it, and I think people appreciate this. So if there's anybody that has watched through this whole thing Thank you, number one, and thanks again for hanging out. But would love to answer your questions. So if you guys want to see certain things, if you're shopping for leather and you want to see something, I'll do my best to get my hands on it, and we can do a little comparison, try to get Amir's opinion, get my like too close of an opinion, and maybe help you make a good decision. So thanks again, and we'll see you again next time.